Hello again, welcome. This is the Brattlecast. I'm Jordan Rich. Great to be with you. I have so much fun when I get together with my good friend Ken Gloss, the owner-operator and the lover of what he does at the Brattle Bookshop in Boston on West Street, right in the heart of downtown. And it's one of the most well-known spots in the city and actually around the country. One of the reasons that you're so kind of well-known and recognized in places like Salt Lake City and Hawaii and Denver and everywhere else you go is because you go to a lot of places for the work you do on the Antiques Roadshow on PBS. You've been doing it for years. And you wanted to talk a little bit about the impact that PBS has had on a shop like yours.
Well, I've been doing the Antiques Roadshow for 25 years. Right now, usually I try to stay out of politics completely because I like to hear everybody's view, and I still do. But, right now, PBS, public television, public radio, obviously is under sort of a siege from funding cuts and so on. And in a lot of the PBS, since I'm from Boston, WGBH, which produces a lot of the shows, has a lot of effects beyond what you might actually first think. And there has been huge amounts of success from our business, sort of secondarily from PBS. Well, first of all, lots of great books came out of it. Julia Child did cookbooks. I tell you, one of the real great presents in collectibles are any of her books signed by her or her and her husband. First editions of those books signed can run into the hundreds, even into the thousands of dollars, because they're so iconic and so perfect as a gift. When GBH first started, when they first started the show, I mean, they were getting into a lot of areas that just weren't feasible for normal shows, normal TV. One of my favorites is Nova. The original producer of that, Michael Ambrosino, used to come into our store all the time and talk about it, and I was interested in science. Obviously, you have Mr. Rogers in Sesame Street. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have a big bird who can walk into Congress, or a Mr. Rogers in his cardigan walk in and people look at it and say, you have to support this. But it has helped our business tremendously. And when they first started, they were always looking for funding. That's one thing you can never get away from public TV. And they're always looking for the public to help support it. And probably, I guess it must be over 60 years ago, they came up with the idea of having a public auction on TV. And when they first started it, it was a week long. It was in the studios, which was on Western Avenue at the time, over near Harvard University. And when you walked into that studio, it was, wow, this is how they make TV.
I know, because I used to volunteer to do it as a radio host in Boston, and a lot of us did, and it was a wild scene.
It was a wild scene, phone banks and just like tables swinging in and out and volunteers running this way and that way. But one of the things that happened with it, my father really loved public radio, public TV. There used to be a news announcer on there called Louis Lyons, and then another one named Robert Barham, who were both customers of ours. And there was someone who did a music show, Robert J. Lertzimer, who did a classical music. They were all customers. They were all friends. And when they came out with the first auction, my father wanted to contribute to it. I mean, and what they do is they would go around to businesses and say, can you contribute either a gift certificate, an item, maybe it was a trip or a car or something that we can auction off and get money from. And my father had a bunch of things that he wanted to do. But he also wanted to be an auctioneer. So he was a character, to say the least. He was a character, and they said, welcomed him on. And I don't know how he did this, and I never really heard the story other than I know he's a character. They used to have a rule about people not being able to auction the items they donated. And I think they thought that was maybe too much of an ad, or could turn into too much of just an outright ad. But somehow my father talked them into saying we do it. And you'd have 6 items on a table. And now the reality is probably my father was the best person to auction off what he donated because he actually knew what it was.
Of course.
He
And
could explain it. He could.
I know enough about your father and the stories you've told me and the stories I've heard that I have no doubt he finessed his way in easily.
Well, but so what would happen is people would bid on the things, and a lot of times the bids were really good bids because you always reminded people that not only were you getting an item, but you were also supporting public television. So we did this year after year after year. And as my father did it more and more, he actually, we planned it. And then he was giving 2 tables worth of items. He loved like the Forsyth Saga, upstairs, downstairs, and he just really wanted to help. But he also found at the same time that people were noticing him on the auction because he was so outgoing and the items he gave were a lot different than what most people were giving. And of course, you start getting calls. Well, I saw you on the Channel 2 auction. I saw you. And it was also a way of leading in one. There was a bookstore in the area that didn't donate. There was sort of what, quote, the old Yankee bookstore,
Hmm.
which they were, but they didn't donate. And this was almost an in for us to the old New England Yankee families because the Lowell family started GBH, and a lot of their relatives and friends were big supporters. So we were finding we were getting more calls. And then year to year to year, we would get more and more things. Now, when I started working at the store, that when the Channel 2 auction was coming up, it would be a big thing because my father put it on me to select all the items. And then, of course, then he'd look and he'd edit. And then I'd have to select more items and then he'd edit. And then I'd have to write them up and get the people from GBH and give it could be a month or 2 long procedure to get the right items to WGBH
Right.
in the right.
An important point, you made this earlier, Ken, but it's important to, I think, remind people that we're in Boston, of course, everybody knows that, but Boston and GBH particularly is where so many of these national programs emanated. I mean, they started right here, and Julia Child being the prime example. So you're talking about almost an epicenter of
Oh,
programs.
yeah. Masterpiece Theater, Frontline,
Nova,
Nova, and many Antiques Roadshow. Uh,
of course.
but what was interesting about that is I remember there was one show where my father was in the studio, and there was an item that came up that the bidding, I think was estimated at a few $100s, and all of a sudden the bidding was up to $2,000 or $3,000, and the people at the show weren't quite sure why. And it was a wanted poster for the John Wilkes Booth and his crew when Lincoln was assassinated. And this poster was particularly rare because it came out almost immediately, but it had carte de physiques or original photographs pasted on 4 photographs pasted on each poster.
Mm.
And these had the original photographs, the wanted poster. Um, and they called my father down to look at it and say, what's going on here? The other thing that I'll say that they did when he told them, these photographs are incredibly rare. The poster is rare. It's worth a lot more than it's being bid on right now. They called the person who donated it and they said, look, you donated at this price. It's going up thousands. The person said, get whatever you can get. It went up to about what the right price was. My father got sold for $10,000. But my father loved doing the auction. He loved going there. He loved seeing the chaos that was going on. He loved meeting the people. And when he died in 1985, and he had health problems for a few years before that, but about I would say March of 1985, basically he was really, really in bad shape. And he could go to the hospital every 2 weeks and they did blood work on him and kept him alive. And he basically said, I want to do, it was in June, I want to do the 50th
Hmm.
Channel 2 auction, or it might have been the 40th. He says, I want to do that. And literally, he kept himself alive. And they wheeled him in a wheelchair. He wouldn't present in a wheel. He got up, did it, got home, said, stop all the treatments. A week and a half later, he died. He literally lived to
Hmm.
do the Channel 2 auction. And then I continued doing it. A couple of years when they were doing it in June, I was doing Antiques Roadshow. My daughter did it. That really brought a lot of the store into prominence. It got us loads of customers, loads of people calling with good libraries. And who would have thought that the Channel 2 auction really helped establish my father as one of the major bookstores? And then we could take it from there. And now I do Antiques Roadshow. And I was buying a computer the other day. I mean, and you can't get much more nerdy place, a wonderful place. There was Micro Center
Oh, sure.
near MIT. But we went in there, and after we bought the computer, one of us had died. One of the younger salesmen came up and he said, "Do you want a bookstore?" And I said, "Well, yeah, my wife and I, we own the Brattle bookshop." He goes, "Oh, I watch you on Antiques Roadshow all the time." So supporting PBS, which I love, and hopefully keeping it going. Think of how many other small little side effects of people working with it, or people that get mentions, and in the enjoyment and the interest in books. I'll tell you, if PBS does something like the Forsyte Saga with John Galsworthy books do not sell well. You put the Forsyte Saga on TV again, all of a sudden, John Galsworthy is going to be a bestseller, and they're good books. So not only is it worth keeping supporting, I love Nova as in Antiques Roadshow, but it the sort of little things that come out of it are not so little.
No, it's wonderful to relay these stories, and I think the fact that you and I have grown up with this in this market, and you've had such an incredible connection and continue to have an incredible connection. But thanks to your dad who kept it going, and what a story about determination, which is really quite admirable. And I think you're right. I think a lot of us feel forget about the politics. We just feel that there's a need for quality programming as much as possible, and TV has an amazing impact, as you know.
Well, and I'll tell you, even on PBS, when GBH, they used to have a, a someone running a show. I'm sure who you know, Ron Della Chiesa,
Dear friend.
who did the music, the American Songbook. Before I used to listen to that when I was on the road all the time. I really didn't know all of the sort of standard classic jazz and American Songbook, and it got me interested. Just, I turned it on one day. I wasn't looking for it, and that led to years of listening. I also ended up, Ron was a customer, but so who would have thought that I would have become interested in Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong and so many others that whatever, all comes out of that. And then that carries over to the music stores, the record stores, the biographies. It all pulls together, and it's important.
Indeed, it does. A terrific connection made. Brattlebookshop.com is the website. Ken Gloss is the man, and we are always having fun when we talk on the Brattlecast, and we invite you to join us in future episodes. Ken, as always, thank you.
Well, thank you. And if anyone's out there listening and has a suggestion, idea, comment, criticism even, let us know. We'll do the best we can.